You and I have been wanting to talk about, speaking of the Bucks, Giannis and his uh, Greek philosophy when it comes to failure, the concept of failure. I believe we haven't really gotten deep into it. I believe we're on the same page with this, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in full. Because from the Celtics standpoint, again, it's interesting. They went from playing with house money to losing at home in Game 7 to now how did they get their house in order? Because a sweep would have been one thing, a gentleman's sweep, but like once they won those 3 in a row, it became their series to lose, especially with Game 7 at home. So given that they were up against history, even though they were up against history, that feels like a failure. And if as Giannis says, there are no failures in sports, there's only steps to success, I'd be damned if that didn't feel like a step backward for the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, I think Giannis is a very interesting case that you can't convince otherwise that his role is nothing more than steps to success because of where he came from.
Correct.
So I won't jump
as
on
a
him.
as a person, as a
Yes.
human, I get I'll get right back to you. I get why Giannis Antetokounmpo thinks that way. I get it. Like they made a movie about this dude's life. All right, they written books about this dude's life. I get it, but in general, that was some bullshit. I don't want to live in a world, Vinny. I do not want to live in a world, especially a sports world, where there is no failure. The problem is that we attach a negative connotation to failure. There's nothing negative about it. It's part of the process. If I could borrow another cliche.
Dude, what's wrong with saying you failed?
Nothing.
Like just before we even go to a personalizing it point, because I'm sure we probably will go there. I look at the team of my youth or my infancy, the Bad Boy Pistons. You talk about Bird steals the ball. They lose that game in 7. Lose that series in 7. That was Game 5. You lose that series in 7, and you beat the Celtics the next year, and then you fail against the Lakers in the finals. Like there's something to failure, forging resilience and reflection, and having. There's a phrase I want to use, but I can't use it because it's really FCC airwaves and it's your podcast. But you got to have real moments with yourself after failures.
I'm about to say we've cussed quite a few times already, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, it ain't quite a cuss word, Michael Smith.
Okay.
I'm sure you could figure out. All right.
Okay.
It ain't quite a cuss word.
Yeah.
But it's moments where, we've all failed before. You know what I mean? We've all failed in something. You fail in relationships, you fail in family, you fail in your career, where you step back and you recalibrate. And the greatest failures to me, at least in my life, haven't been the situations where, man, it's so far away that it's a mirage and I never got close to it. The biggest failures are where it's close enough, where you can taste it and you can smell it and it's right in front of your face. And how much more do you need before you can attain whatever this thing is? And whether it turns into an abject failure or it turns into the Will Smith, how come he don't want me? Like, you got to be able to absorb that. Saying that failure doesn't exist is basically saying I can't handle failure. I'm not strong enough to accept and acknowledge and process failure. And that's a flaw in your own architectural system, because you got to be able to acknowledge it and process it and be able to move on from it and not let it devastate you beyond the initial devastation.
Well, and that's what I struggle with the Giannis, which obviously got made into a commercial and it got celebrated and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, nah, man, like that just feels soft, because it's like. And I don't think that Giannis views this that much differently. I think he says it differently or presents it differently. I don't think we're saying different things, because it's like he says there are no failures. We say there are failures, but we're both talking about them being steps in the process and steps to success. It's like, I don't think Giannis's philosophy, I've heard Kobe say similar things, if I'm not mistaken. You know what I'm saying? That it's just like, I didn't fail. I learned. Or Brady and Kobe have similar mindsets. But when you are the 8th seed or the number 1 seed and you lose to the 8th seed, that is a failure. When you have game 7 at home, after winning the previous 3, I guess momentum died here too. After winning the previous 3, and you have game 7 at home and you are the better team, and you that is a failure. If you're the Boston Celtics, it's all relative, by the way. I mean, not everybody who loses is a failure. Or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Not everybody who loses failed. Because as many have pointed out, there's a difference between failing and being a failure. Identifying as something or a person identifying as a failure, that is problematic, and that is much deeper than failing. We all fail, and that's part of being a flawed human being. But to me, failure, now I'm about to get my Greek philosophy on. Like, to me, failure is what life is all about, because if you're not failing, that means you're not trying hard enough. If you're not experiencing failure, then you're doing it wrong. Like, you should be experiencing failures, and but using those failures as stepping stones as opposed to setbacks, or I beg your pardon, let me say that again. Using those failures as stepping stones instead of setbacks, or setups instead of setbacks, is what life is all about, and what sports should be all about. Like we joked about, you can't have the pleasure without the pain thing. It's like, who are athletes and what is sports without, drop passes or missed shots or heartbreaking losses, only for those teams to come back and say, you know what, we had to go through that to get here. From a personal standpoint, like, and I think a lot of it is just making peace with the failure too. That's the process, because like for me, it's like, have I failed? And again, like, it has such a negative, it's a charged word. Oh, you failed. It's like, well, yeah, but that failure was necessary for a greater success, or for my next move. Like, I often like to say, you weren't rejected, you were redirected. Like, in my professional life, whatever I would consider, or what others may consider a failure, I have now been able to look back on and be like, no, actually, that was necessary. And what did I learn from that? I know people have said I didn't lose, I learned. What did I learn from that? And how did it make me better? So yes, it was a failure, but failure is not an ugly, dirty word. And that's my issue.
You know what it
it's
is?
Like,
Yeah. You know what it is? People equate failure with final. And that, like, it's a period there as opposed to a comma. And that nothing happens after failure. That failure happens and it's all over. And there's no chance for redemption. There's no chance for learning. There's no chance for, like you said, being able to reorganize your own, individual chess pieces and move in a different direction. I think because, like you said, like I genuinely believe that it, like, here's the best way I can put it. A book I read during the pandemic, it was called The 4 Agreements. And I can't remember all 4 of them, but the number one thing of the 4 agreements was, don't take things personally. I know, and I know we've turned everything into the Michael Jordan meme, and I took that personally, which is fine. But that was the easiest thing for me to pull back from, because I used to take everything personally. Not everything, not like a narcissist. But if something happened to me, then it's like you internalize it and you try to figure out, man, why did this happen to me? What could I have done better? What could I have done different? As opposed to saying, sometimes things happen. You can't always prepare for everything. And you've got to be able to, lack of a better phrase, you got to be able to pivot to whatever the next thing is, even if it is after a failure. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean, like I said, that you're final, you're done, you're a failure. It just means that the attributes have to be applied somewhere else. And it has to
Yeah.
look and feel a little bit different. And we've seen in sports, Michael Jordan's greatest success came after his greatest failures, losing to the
Right.
Pistons all those years. Boom, three
Right.
championships. Losing to the Orlando Magic and in what some people would say embarrassing fashion. Boom, coming back and winning three championships. Those things don't happen unless there is the heartbreak. And that's the thing. We are
Failure
so
is
afraid of heartbeat.
Yeah. Failure is the best part of the story. Like that's when the story gets good. Is when you have to like who doesn't love a comeback story? What are you coming back from? What are you coming back from? You're coming back from adversity. You're coming back from failure. You're coming back and overcoming doubt, you know? And it's just like, I I don't know, man. I just feel like if you can't if you can't look back at a failure and appreciate it, then I just think you need to shift your paradigm and shift your perspective. Like it hurts in the moment, and maybe you don't want to accept that we failed. Because again, and I get why going back to Giannis, I get why Giannis responded the way he did in that moment, because that is a trigger word,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I think he said, uh, whatever the number is, Jordan played, 15 years and won 6 championships. You tell me the other 9 years of failure? Yes. In his mind, and Jordan would say the same. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. But it doesn't mean that Jordan was a failure.
Right.
Those seasons, he didn't reach the goal. And again, it varies for expectations.
It goes
like
to expectations.
if you're Michael Jordan, if you're Magic Johnson, like Magic Johnson went to the finals 9 times. He lost 4 of them, right? He would say those were failures. Not to say that failure. Here's the other thing. I love how you said it's not final. And not to say that the problem too is that people do not believe that there's value in failure. They don't embrace failure the same way they embrace successes. It's like if we could count it all joy, we could learn to count it all joy and celebrate failure the same way we celebrate successes and look at them through the prism of what am I learning from it? How is it making me better? Then we shouldn't look at failure as the opposite side of a coin. To me, they're kind of like they're one and the same. I feel like a Frankie Beverly and Maze song. It's like joy and pain is like sunshine and rain. Can I get an amen?
Amen. Now, what I will say is, you said failure hurts in the moment.
It hurts for a long time.
No, failure hurts every time you think about it. It
For
hurts
sure. For sure.
I don't know about the things that I've really failed at. Even some things that some people would say that's not your failure.
But I think that's the lesson, though, Vinny. I think that's the lesson. I think the reason why it stings, and hopefully a little bit less as time goes on, I think that's just the lesson. It's the scar. It's the reminder. It doesn't mean it's still a wound or an open wound, but it's a reminder. So if you think about that failure, if I think about things from my past, if I think about things, I'm glad you said it's not just in sports. It's not just professionally. It's whether it's a relationship, it's, well, what could I have done better? And now, what could I do better moving forward? Because you're not going to tell me that Giannis ain't going to be in the gym like a madman this summer. Not that he already isn't. Like, what you got, because it hurts because it's a reminder, hey, there's an opportunity to do something about it. There's an opportunity for, as you said, redemption. This sentence is going on.
Well, here's the other thing. Because we are in a culture of you can't sleep 8 hours a night or whatever, that ridiculous stuff or whatever that says, oh, if you want to be a millionaire, you can't sleep and da 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 da. So we're trained and ingrained to say more, do more, exhaust yourself. And if there's that, then there's failure, and then there's failure, then it is a for who, for what sort of situation. Like, it's almost like the entire paradigm is flawed. So you can't even acknowledge you can't acknowledge the other. So for me, Michael, and I hope I'm making sense when I say this.
You're making a lot of sense.
You go back into your own personal lab and you do your own personal reflections. And it's not always about working smarter or working harder. You understand. And last night was maybe the perfect example. And game 6 was a perfect example. some things are out of your hands. Like, lack of a better phrase, most of us in our positions, we do our best to control the variables in our personal life, especially in our professional life. We try to do everything we can to mitigate the possibility of failure, to mitigate the possibility of our fatal flaws coming back and haunting us in a huge way. And sometimes, Michael, whether it's an ankle or not even a missed box out, just I'm 3 feet to the left and I missed this tip in, a miracle bounce. Some things don't go your way, but you have to have the confidence and the foundation and the acknowledgement that something bad can happen, something devastating can happen, and I can pick myself up. It's going to hurt.
Good can come from it. You're right.
And something good can come from it. And that you may not always get your lick back. Like, that's the other thing. You may not always get your lick back.